I'm gonna show you something beautiful.
Hello there. So, today I just watched Avengers Age of Ultron, which did in fact come out in my area, surprisingly enough. I was expecting it to come out in May, but it's out now in my area, so if it's not in your area, with that childishness out of the way, let's talk about the film, shall we? I'll cut immediately to the chase and explain to you that this film is disappointing. And, well, to be more specific, it is inevitably disappointing. Why? Well, partly it is its own fault. But mostly it's because it's the sequel to The Avengers. And let's be honest with ourselves. One of the main reasons we found the first Avengers so impressive and mind-blowing, it's because it was something that was never quite attempted before by Hollywood. It was the culmination of 5 different storylines from 5 different films converging together into one giant cinematic movie continuity. And it was simple and to the point. It is the plot of the film was basically we got these 5 heroes, unite them together and make them fight aliens. Now you could add a not so subtle reading about 9/11 related fears with the alien attacking New York, the Hitauri, I believe they are called. By the way, I'm not a comic book nerd, so my judgment of the film might be biased in that regard. Nevertheless, with the sequel to one of the most successful films of all time, clearly, to impress the audience, which at this point might have the biggest kind of expectations possible after the very solid impression we've got from the first film, they decided to add something to the sequel, of course. But because that's what sequels are supposed to do, good sequels at least, they add to the whole that the original created. They build themselves out of the ashes, so to speak, of the original. But in retrospect, the only addition they seem to come up with this sequel was a much more complicated story. A story so complicated, in fact, that it kind of lost itself in the midst of this action-packed fireworks kind of spectacle. Let me explain. Now, we have Ultron, the new villain, and they have to stop him because he wants to save the world / destroy humanity. And he is apparently, basically, personality-wise, is the dark side of Tony Stark. And he hates that. He hates the idea that his personality comes vicariously from another person, from his creator. And he longs for originality, so to speak. And his personality is basically the amalgamation of Tony Stark's original ideal of saving the world from the Hitauri invasion, which comes in the classic form of the thematic controversy of preventing a war will cause a war, which is one of the recurring themes in the film, which is already kind of a complicated aspect of the film to tackle in a story that, well, in a diegesis that's all about superheroic guys and gals fighting things, for lack of a better word. And that's the problem, because this is a film, the film's main focus is to create spectacle, is to abduct your attention with action set pieces and cool stuff, so to speak. And also the very enjoyable character dynamics that made the first film so strong, and when you got Joss Whedon at the reins, you would expect nothing less. And that's what you get. The problem with that is you had to convey a plot too, and the plot they chose to convey is a bit more complicated for this kind of film. As a result, the best way they found to convey such story is through real quick, lightning fast dialogue exchanges before the next action set piece takes place. It's like this: hey, we have to do this and this, and we have to establish this and that, and something out of the other happened, and now action piece. And then, hey, now we have to do this and this and this and this, and to do that we have to do this, 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 and this. Are you following yet? And now action set piece. Set piece. It's like it's trying to distract you from its own story. Or worse, it seems like the story is finding trouble to catch up with the frenetic rhythm of the film. And such, the story itself is the biggest shortcoming of this film, especially when it concerns the introduction of a whole new character later on in the film, which I won't spoil to you. But if you know your comics, you would expect him to make an appearance. And I understand the core logic behind how this character, this very specific character, came to be. But the way they explained it, or the lack of ways in which they explained it, makes it more confusing than it really was. Makes it sound more confusing than it really was. And that's the biggest shortcoming of the film. Well, that and the sad really realization that all of the action set pieces, including the big climactic battle, they are good, they are well directed and well edited, but they are basically the same scenes that the first film had. Sometimes they're even directed in the same identical way. They lack individuality, much like Ultron himself, which is his recurring tragedy. Ultron is a great character, by the way. I wish he could have been developed more. But we didn't have time for that because, well, we had to repeat these same action scenes over and over, and we had to really quick explain the plot. But hey, it was still fun. Again, not as impressive as the first one, and not as impactful for obvious reasons, by which were not being the first one. And the first one was impactful specifically because it was the first one. And it was fun, but it was more fun because it was the first one. And I made myself clear. In fact, the very same climactic, big-scale battle, it's basically exactly like the first film. Fighting countless millions and thousands of drones, like the Kitauri, except now they are Iron Man rejects under control of Ultron. And at times it feels like I'm watching the first film, and at other times it feels like I'm watching a film that doesn't quite know how to tell its own story. And other times it feels like I accidentally missed a film leading up to this film, by the way it establishes itself. Which I didn't, I saw them all. Although admittedly I did not care enough to watch the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show. Hey, you should have watched that! I didn't want to. I'm following the films, alright? Yeah. But hey, it's still fun. It's still Avengers. The worst thing I could say to an Avengers film is that it's not at least entertaining. It is. And the best parts of it are actually the moments in which, the rare moments in which the film decides to slow down a little bit to explore the characters both individually and as dynamically connected. To explore what they are and how they are in this moment, in the specific context of being the Avengers, both in the eyes of themselves and the world at large. and possibly the best character was actually Hawkeye. He was really surprising in this film. He was also the funniest, and the wisest, and the coolest overall. Yes, Hawkeye rules, baby. Also, Natasha and Bruce Banner had a thing going on, apparently. Huh. That was cute too. I don't particularly care, admittedly, but that was cute too. Well, I guess that covers it all. I didn't want to spoil anything to you, because, well, this film just came out, and probably not everyone has seen it yet, by the point I'm recording this, that is. So, I hope this counts as a perfectly serviceable review, spoiler-free review, to give you an idea of what to expect from this film. Do not expect a particularly solid or intriguing plot. Expect a somewhat overcomplicated story that didn't find a proper way to tell itself. Amidst several action set pieces that you saw already, technically. But hey, there's Hulk versus the Iron Man Hulk Buster suit. That was one of the best moments in the film, action-wise, at least. So I guess you have that. So I guess this film has that when it comes to individuality. Also, I might have said this already, but Ultron is a lot of fun as a villain. Again, I wish there was more time to develop everything else. But it could have been a lot worse. And I have to admit that after watching that glory that was Guardians of the Galaxy, my standards when it comes to Marvel Studios films has gotten a bit higher than normal. So you should count that too. What I'm trying to say is, when you go watch Avengers, don't expect it to be as gloriously fantastic as the first one. In case you personally find it as gloriously fantastic as the first one, or even more as gloriously fantastic, then that's good. More power to you. Good for you. You're having more fun than I. But if you don't find it as gloriously fantastic as the first one, well, if you watched my video at least, you have been warned ahead. So you know more or less what to expect. This has been Madhog, and have fun watching the Avengers, because I know you'll be watching them. Everyone will.